Welcome to the space where creatives have aligned a positive and intellectual collab of open minds. For sharing and learning from one another, it's a vibe. Read your Rosa podcast on the mic. Subscribe, educators spitting bars. I guess you didn't know I'm multifaceted and humble, checking off life goals. The classroom is my comfort zone where I plant and sow seeds of knowledge, compassion, empathy, and hope. Reading is the key to unlocking your potential. Countless benefits, including cognitive and mental. Regardless of the genre, books are highly influential. Go get yours, I'll get mine. Making strides, monumental. Come rock with me and get down to this new jam. Reaching out to my friends, I had a very simple plan. Educate the masses through books and life lessons. It's a grand slam. I'm out. Leituala and welcome to the Reads with Rosa podcast. On today's show, I will be chatting to a fellow educator from Auckland, New Zealand. Welcome to the show, Laureen Leituala. How are you, sis?
Oh, good, thank you.
Man, it's Saturday morning. Look, here we are.
I know.
I appreciate this, sis. I know, as I said off camera, Saturdays, weekends are precious. Weekends are family time. So I really appreciate you coming through today just to share some thoughts, share a bit of your journey. I'm grateful, sis. I really am.
Yeah, and I'm really privileged to be part of this. When you asked me, I was like, oh, wow, she wants to be on your podcast. So,
I know.
yeah,
hey, come on.
you.
You are, I think, educators, everyone has a journey. Everyone has their pedagogy. Everyone has the way that they run their classroom. And I'm always curious to hear about different educators and the journey, the journey in education, how you got there. So I'm excited about this. And also, I just wanted to say a huge thank you because I know you're a regular supporter of the podcast. I mean, I see you. So
Stalking you.
I appreciate it. We put out, these amazing stories that people, guests, they come on and share, in this space. And sometimes it can be quite vulnerable. But I appreciate that people come on to share their stories. I share a bit of them. So I was like, I'm going to get her on. I need to get her on here just to share a little bit about what makes you an amazing teacher. I wanted to, start with, who is Laureen? Where are you from? Shout out your people. I always say shout out the village that's behind you. So if you could share a little bit before we start, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure, of course. So I was born in Auckland. I'm from Tamaki Makaurau. Both my parents were born in Samoa. So my dad hails from Mangiangi in Upolu, and my mum was born in Salaufi but raised in Whasotai. So quite close to the airport, and so that's my heritage. So both Samoan. Mum and dad are also mixed. So mum's got Chinese, English, and dad has German as well. So that's why I'm so ba'e. But I'm definitely, Samoan through and through. Brought up in West Auckland. But my parents sent me to Central Auckland to go and get educated. So they were one of those parents that didn't want their kids to stay in the area. They wanted us to go out. So I think that's a story of a lot of our Pasifika families doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, so. I just wanna say West Side. That's what's up, man. West Auckland. Yes, that's what's up. Okay, so I guess how did you get into teaching?
So what was funny is I actually wanted to be a dancer. That was my passion. So growing up, my parents made me do ballet and jazz, and I was really into that. I was the only Islander in my class, and I was really passionate about that. But I think I took another path and decided, after uni, I might try this teaching, and then got in teaching through there. But dancing's my real passion.
Oh my gosh. Are you like secretly part of the royal family or something? Just kidding. I don't know. Like, were you in fresh movement?
No, no, no,
Is there
no.
something I need to know here? Can you show me
No.
your jazz hands? Sorry, I'm kidding, sis. I'm kidding. That is
Oh, no, that's
amazing,
fine. Yeah.
man.
So it's funny. It's quite funny,
Wow,
but I still have that love for dance. I really do.
that
But
is,
yeah.
man, that is so cool. And have you, do you share that love of dancing in your classroom? Like, oh my goodness, your
Yes, I
kids must be
do.
doing some
I
pretty
do.
cool things.
But I've
What?
also really got into my Pacific dancing as well. So that's something that's really, being um, reinvigorated, I guess. And so I do a lot of that in the classroom too. My class have always won we have an Irish jig off. So I've won it for the last couple of years. So,
Oh,
I get the trophy.
that's it. Let's battle. Irish dancing. Let's go. Man, sis, that's so cool. We're going to talk more about your teaching. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on. I wanted to ask though, reading. Were you a reader growing up? Were you, someone that was reading a lot, buying books?
No, definitely. I was definitely a reader. Loved reading all the time. You would always find my head in a book constantly. I remember I went to Australia for Christmas holidays one time, and my auntie asked me, "Oh, what do you want for Christmas?" And I was like, "Books." And she's
Oh,
like, "Really? Is that all?" And I was like, "No, no, seriously, I do. I want." And so I asked her to buy the Stephen King books because I was really into Stephen King
ooh,
at the time. So Misery and all of those really good.
yo, that is awesome. Can you remember a teacher who inspired you, or like a favorite teacher? Whether in primary or high school, intermediate.
So in my primary school, my year 7 teacher, her name was Mrs. Armitage, and she was really, really strict, but she had high expectations for all of us. So she treated everyone so fairly. I just remember that, other people saying that they felt their teachers really didn't acknowledge them and their culture. But my teacher, she was, all of you are going to be doing well. It doesn't matter what your background is. And she'll just push us through, particularly with maths. She was a really strict maths teacher. And I think that was really good, a really good foundation for me. And then in high school, I had a teacher named Mr. Collins. He was an English teacher, and he taught me English in year 13. And I remember him taking us to the movies to watch Romeo and Juliet, and doing things that most teachers wouldn't do. He would just go out of his way to really try and connect with us and really help us because English at that level is really difficult, Shakespearean language and everything like that. But he was amazing. So those were people, really good teachers who were great role models for me, and had that fairness about them. There was that real equality in the classroom. I never really felt that, oh, I'm not good enough. There was always that, no, you are good enough and you will be doing this, So I was quite lucky to have those teachers.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you share that because, like you said, you were lucky to have those teachers because we also hear stories of, our Māori and Pacific students not always having a teacher like that. I mean, obviously now in our schools, there's a little bit more in terms of representation on staff. But then you always do, on the other hand, you do hear stories of kids who perhaps weren't so lucky, in terms of connecting with, educators in the classroom and knowing their worth, being
Yes.
acknowledged. And so it's so nice to hear that you had that experience where you did have educators who did show that they cared. And it's those little things that kind of, stick with you, right? That it stays with you for life. I was wondering then, thinking about those teachers, like, and the values and the you know, what they brought to the classroom, how has that, does that have any impact in terms of what you like, how you are now as a teacher? Like, do you kind of sometimes sit and think, man, I'm not going to be that teacher, but I'm definitely going to try and be this teacher, thinking about how you came through school?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I'm always a reflective teacher. I'm always stepping back, having a look at my practice and getting that feedback from my students in front of me. But for me, it's building that environment in the classroom where the children feel safe enough to speak up, be themselves, share their opinion, and also have the respect to to listen to other people's opinions too, because we're in a setting right now where if you say something that someone doesn't agree with you, it could get you into serious problems because there's so much controversy. There's so much, like, this is your opinion and this is your opinion, and we're always clashing. But I always try and build an environment where, okay, this is their opinion. We will listen to it. We don't have to agree, but we'll just respect what they're saying and then see if we can find more evidence and more research or anything behind that. So it's constantly building that critical thinking for the children in the classroom.
Yeah, I think I like that. So we agree to disagree, right? That's something I say to my students all the time, whether it's my grade 12 class or my grade 6 class, that perspectives and our view of the world is different. We all bring, as stakeholders in our classrooms, everyone brings something different. And we, like you said, we value your opinion, we respect opinions, but we agree to disagree. And so, that's also, like you said, that's another way of building, just relationships in the classroom in terms of like student to student, that, oh, okay, we're friends, but I also know that we have different opinions on different issues. So that's cool. I love that. I love what you just shared. That is
Yeah.
super dope. That is super dope. Can you tell us which age group you teach right now?
Oh, yeah. So I teach year 5, 6. It's a composite class. And I'm actually in the classroom 2 days a week with those children. And I share the class with another teacher who's in there 3 days a week. And I also take on a role which is called the across school role. So in New Zealand, we have kahuiako, which a lot of schools are part of. So I'm part of the Auckland Catholic kahuiako, and I help support 10 other primary schools with culturally responsive practice in their schools. And I also run the ESOL program at our school as well.
Oh, nice. Can you explain for those listening what composite class means, just for those who are not
Yeah.
quite familiar with the term?
So composite class basically is just 2 year levels put together in a class. Because we're quite a small school, 270,
Oh, wow.
we can't really have single year levels from year 3. So year 3 and 4 are together, year 5 and 6 are put together into one class.
Interesting. I was wondering, do you remember your first day of teaching? Do you
So I
remember that?
yeah, I started off in secondary actually. So I'm secondary trained as well as primary trained. And I taught at Mount Albert Grammar. That was my first teaching position. And so I was a very young teacher. I was only 23 at the time. I probably still look like a student as well at that time. So it was really daunting. I just felt like, oh, I don't know if I'm really ready for this. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing, But once I got into the lesson and teaching, I think it was okay. But I just remember being surrounded by huge, Pasifika boys and all these little, because I had an immersion class as well with all these international students. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to teach all of these kids English at a really high level. So it was really daunting, but enjoyable at the same time.
you know, thinking about your classroom now, your classroom setting, if I was a fly on the wall, I love this question because, like teachers run their classes so differently, So if I was a fly on the wall in your classroom, what would I be seeing? What would I be hearing?
Yeah, so my class is always loud because I'm really noisy. Sometimes I play music as well in the classroom. I think music is a really good tool to just help children settle and be calm. But we do lots of conversation, lots of talking, lots of group work. Um, I also am always walking around the classroom. I never really sit. I'm not that sit at the desk type of teacher. I'm always trying to interact, see what's going on, and having conversations with kids. So there's a lot of noise and a lot of movement in the classroom.
Nice, nice. And so, how do you create that, or how do you cultivate, a brave, a safe space for your learners?
So I think in the beginning of the year is a really good opportunity to set those parameters in the classroom. So when you're building the relationship with the children, is helping them to know how to work in a group. So I might do group activities and then we come back and discuss how did it work? What could we do better? So we're always, looking at self improving and feedbacking and self reflection. So that's one way. And also just me be myself. So having a laugh,
Yes.
laughing at myself, when I do something silly or, the kids always then feel more relaxed because like, oh yeah, Mrs. Leituala, she's an egg as well. So,
So I was wondering about role models. Earlier, you spoke of teachers that inspired you when you were at school. Teachers that really showed they cared. So I was wondering, when you were growing up, who were some other role models that you had in your life? That kept you motivated and striving for those goals.
I think firstly would be my mum. She's quite a real typical Samoan mother who's got really high expectations of their daughter. And she was really, really tough on me growing up and really pushing me to always do my best and be better and don't just be like everybody else are, you better. So she's probably one of my main role models. And she actually left school at a young age in Samoa. So she really valued education and wanted all of us, me and my brothers, to make the most of the opportunities that we've got in New Zealand and being educated here. So she was probably one of them. Also, my cousin from my dad's side, he was the first one to graduate from university, and I think he did a degree in mathematics. and
Wow.
then he became a teacher himself in secondary school. And I remember him saying, because we had a big kongai for his big celebration for his graduation, and I remember him turning around and it's like, "Oh, I hope you can do this, Laureen. You need to be the next one to step up." And I kind of got offended, like, "Of course I'm going to do it." Like it was really funny, but in a way, it was really good that he really set that standard for all of us in the family, all the kids.
Have you been to Samoa?
Yes, yeah, I've been twice.
Yeah. How do you stay connected in terms of like language and Samoa in your own life, in your everyday routines and
Yeah, so one of the ways I did was marry a Samoan. So that
malo
helps.
lava, malo lava, malo, malo.
I can't run away from it. No. But also just really going out and searching for it. You know, social media is so awesome
Yes.
because you can make so many connections with people. And I think like Lani Went Young, the author, she actually, you know, I connected through with her through social media because I went to one of her book openings, her book launch, and then I realized she was like a neighbor. You know, she lived close by, and you know, I was like, oh my gosh, Lani's like my neighbor, and I was like fanboy. They're like, oh my gosh, you know. But she's so normal and just so down to earth. But it was really funny because when I first met her, I was so overwhelmed. But also, you know, any community things that come up, I always try and get involved. So I got my daughter doing Samoan Siva for her dancing. My boys are learning Siva Afi. So we're always trying to be really active and trying to seek out, because like you said, we don't have the village, we don't have all this family around us to do these things. But through all of this, we're actually finding that we're related to people. Like my
Yes.
boy Siva Afi, we're related. We find out we're related to the guy teacher that, you know, so it's making the effort to make those connections is probably my biggest thing, being in Auckland, because we don't have that opportunity or that knowledge that's been passed down. You know, my grandparents have passed away, so it's my it's probably my job to really step out and challenge myself for my own family and our own legacy, really, and really force myself to speak Samoan as much as I can with my husband and my children, because it's English all the time, you know.
Yeah. I was wondering about cultural groups at your school, because I happen to be, just browsing through your school website. And you mentioned the Irish jig, earlier. And I was wondering, so are you one of the teachers that runs the cultural group at your school? Yeah.
Yeah, so we have a Pacific dance group that I take with the children. So I open up to anybody. I do try and really push for our Pasifika children to be part of it, but it's open to any student. So my last group was really diverse. I had Chinese, Barangi, Pacific Island students, and so it's just a mixture of Samoan dancing, Cook Island dancing, and then I do a separate group for the boys because the boys want to be separate. They want to do their whakopaki and sa and things like that. So and I always try and encourage parents to come along if they're able to, because you know, I don't have that knowledge of Tongan dancing, for example, or other types of siva. But I'm also the only Pacific Island teacher at my school too, so sometimes that can be really
Wow.
tricky.
I was going to ask that. So on that note, I was wondering, being the go-to Pacific Island teacher at your school, how do you find a balance in terms of giving 200% as a teacher in the learning context, right? In the classroom learning environment, but then also being that go-to teacher for, I'm assuming, all things Pacifica. How do you find a balance? How do you look after yourself? Because we always hear stories of people in your position. I'm the only Maori teacher. I'm the only Pacific Island teacher, and it can become overwhelming. It can have like a detrimental effect on your health, mental health. So, how do you find that balance? Are you finding that balance? I guess is the question.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was very overwhelming because every time there were issues, oh, Laureen, can you please speak to these parents? Oh, can you go and see what's happening with this child? Oh, you know, any kind of issue or concern. But then I made a point in myself to say, you know what, I need to speak up and actually speak to senior management. So I just went to the principal and actually said to him, you know, I love being Pasifika. I'm really proud to be Samoan and I love supporting the community. But I feel like that teachers need to really build that relationship with the
Yeah.
families and step out and really talk to the mum and dad, because a lot of the times the parents were saying, oh, why isn't the teacher telling me? Why are you
Yes.
telling me? You're not the teacher, you know? And so I was giving that information and feedback back to the school. And then they realized that actually it's the teacher that's the first port of call. They're the
Yes.
ones that need to build the relationship. And I don't have to carry every single problem on my own, because it's easy to deflect, right? It's easy for the teachers to
Yes.
go, oh, we'll just hand it over to her. She can deal with it. It's all good. We're all good now. But if they really want to know their students and build that relationship, they have to step out and, you know, take the risk and challenge themselves and talk to the parents. Even if they can't speak English, it's okay. Just make that
Yes.
first step.
Absolutely agree with you, sis. 200%. I think that that can apply in any like educational institution, like
Yes.
learning context, because it's so easy to be like, oh, okay, let me just get let's go and ask Miss Rosa because she's the this teacher or that teacher, and so I think it's the responsibility of all educators, all teachers, to lead from the front and say, okay, I am going to build rapport, not just with the child, the learner, but also with families. You have to, and language is not a barrier. It
Yeah,
should never
exactly.
be a barrier because, we live in this age of technology where there are so many different ways that you can connect with families and parents, in regards to conversations about education and where their children are at in terms of their learning. So man, that is super important. Please keep dropping the gems, sis. Keep dropping these gems because they're just timely reminders. Timely reminders. Don't just like you said, deflect and give it to someone else. Like we all play a part. It's interesting that you say you're an ESOL teacher as well, because that's also part of my role as the EAR teacher, and I cannot like I get so many emails and people saying, I've got a problem with this child vocabulary. I have a problem with this child not reading. And my thing is, well, I appreciate when people reach out and they do want to know, what should I do here and there. But I just always look back and go, well, what are you doing right now? What are you currently doing with the student in the classroom? How are you, if they're not a reader, then in terms of reading activities, like are you differentiating? Are you scaffolding? So what are you doing as the teacher right there in the learning
Yeah,
environment?
totally
Then we
agree.
can then we can have a conversation, because the other thing is, I think you will know this as an ESOL teacher as well. We don't have all the answers, but we can work together. But they shouldn't, it's so easy to just say, oh, just go to the language support teacher, just go to the language needs teacher, just go to the acquisition teachers. They'll do it all. They'll do it all. And it's like, no, we're all stakeholders in this
Yes.
in this child's education. So what are you bringing so that I can build off mathematics? So what's the vocabulary that you're learning in there? How are you delivering that? Then I can perhaps support that in our own, EAR classroom. So sorry, I kind of went
Yeah.
off on a kind of went
No,
off on a rant there,
no.
but it just, you are dropping so many gems, so many timely reminders of these real, what seems to be just real basic, like things that we should
That's
be
what
doing.
I totally agree. And it's sometimes it's obvious, but then it's not, you know. So we have to always remind ourselves and remind each
Yes.
other that, you know, this is a collective approach. It's not about just me. You know, we talk about when a 5-year-old comes in, this 5-year-old is everybody's responsibility. Just because they're in this teacher's class doesn't mean
Yes.
that I'm not going to have an interaction with them or meet this child or have an influence on that child. Everyone will in some sort of way, but we have to do it as a collective. And some of us have strengths in certain areas, and some of us have, don't. And so we just support each other through. But it's not one person's responsibility; it's all of us. We've got to do it together. And
Yes.
and also going back to the whole, being the only Pasifika teacher, it's okay to say no. Sometimes we feel like we've got to be part of every single group, every single whono, every single, talanoa that's going on, but you don't have to. And I think getting other teachers involved is so, so important because you've got to think about your well being. You've got to look after yourself too, so that you can be the best, teacher for your
Yeah.
children.
On that note, I was wondering, as a teacher and a mother, and then we're living in this pandemic, like how are you managing, like as a mother with children, and then your own just what's going on at school, like how in terms of teaching and your students, like how are you finding the transition, back and forth, during this pandemic, like are you coping all right? Are you have you got some set routines that you're working on? Like how are you managing those roles through this pandemic?
Yeah, I think having set routines with my own children has really helped. So, it sounds really silly. We set this timetable, how things are going to be done. So, during the pandemic, it was this is what you're going to be doing, particularly with the younger ones. We just had the morning for them so they knew exactly what they were doing. And they really liked that structure because it was really similar to what they were doing in the classroom anyway. And then that way I could go and work with my students and have my workshops with my kids online while the children are busy doing their work. So it's just setting those parameters for them and those expectations for them. And also, my older children were quite lucky because they're quite sufficient, self sufficient. They've got the whole program online. Every class is one after the other. They basically just sitting in front of a screen for the whole day, which is pretty hard going for them. But also it's just being having those breaks and just saying, you know what, today let's just go outside, and I think a lot of parents were doing that as well. It's we can't always be sitting in front of the screen. It's probably not a good idea to be sitting in front of the screen for hours on end as well.
Yeah.
But I always felt too like that obligation to, I've got to mark all the work that the students are turning in and comment on all their emails. And because we use Google Classroom, and so I was, constantly marking everything. And so then I would be stuck hours on end till probably 8, 9 o'clock at night marking students' work because I felt that I had to always give
Right.
that interaction to them, until I set the down some rules. I was like, no, after 4 o'clock, I'm not going to mark any more work, and I made that really clear with the parents too. So it's really important to set those expectations right from the beginning, because once you keep giving more and more, the expectation from the community will like, oh, yep, she'll do it. She's always going to answer.
Right.
She's always going to be there. And then you just get burnt out.
That's so true. And I think that that is something that we have to continue to work towards and be strong enough to make those decisions. And I think you kind of alluded it to earlier, as Pacific Island teachers, even our Māori teachers, it's always that pressure to be doing everything because that's just how we roll. It's that pressure to, okay, I'm just going to give a little bit more. It's okay. I care. And I think that, we have to remind ourselves, I think our students understand that we care, but you bring up that just real important point, like setting boundaries, setting expectations, because at the end of the day, if something happens to you, you're just going to be replaced.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing with any job is you could be the most amazing teacher, e pe a kupulo se whalave lave,
Yeah,
you know,
sa'o.
and you're
Yeah,
like, you're in the whalemai or something, you're in the hospital, you're just going to be replaced by a substitute, you know, a relief teacher. So I love that you've said, you know, hey, I realized that I had to do this because that's the thing with online learning, man. It gets draining, like you said, not just for your students and your own children, but man, just that extra work. But you know, you got when the time comes, you just gotta take off that hat and it's done. You know, like that's what COVID has done. Like the
yeah.
pandemic, like you know me, like I have this thing, like I will not check my emails, like I have a friend who lives down the road. She'll text me, "Oh, check your email." I'm like, I refuse to check my emails. I mean, recently we've had to check because of COVID cases.
Yes, yeah.
So you know, we've been told we kind of have to check every now and then. But I make it like when I leave the school gates, I'm like, later, bo. You know, I'm like, later, because you know, if you, what's gonna happen? E mai loa, yeah, leo ngā. And if it,
Exactly.
you know, when it's your livelihood, I mean, you know, like,
What
I
we
think
could,
as
yeah.
Pacific Islanders, we're just naturally we're giving, we're loving people, we care, but you just got to draw the line somewhere because you can just be replaced, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's indispensable, right? Like
Yes,
no one is, doesn't matter how amazing they could
yes,
say you.
exactly.
The school
Ex-
rolls on, you know, when you're
yeah,
sick and you're not at school, school's still going. It's not stopping
ex-
because, oh no, Mrs. Leituala's not here, we can't do this. Nah, everything's rolling, you know? Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah,
so it is. It's and it's you know. I mean, come on, we're talking about it. It's like as if it's the super easy thing to do, but it's something that we constantly have to work
yeah,
at. Like, you know, it's just one of
yeah.
those.
You have to consciously turn off because I know I have issues sometimes with my court law, right? Because he's like, oh my gosh, all you want to do. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. I'll
Oh,
turn it
yeah,
off.
but
I'll turn it off. He's like,
good
man,
reminder. Good reminder.
Pepe, Pepe, man.
Yeah. So yeah, Sasa right there. Stop it. So you know, thinking about your students, has it been difficult to keep them motivated during the pandemic? Like, I mean, obviously we're all in schools and we're just like you said, life goes on, right? We're carrying on with our teaching and learning. Has it been difficult to motivate them, or are the kids are just you know are kids just being kids and just kind of like going with the flow as always?
I think at first, initially, it wasn't that hard to really, engage the
Mm,
students. But as the lockdown got longer and longer, it
mm,
became more difficult. So
mm,
we had to really adapt a lot of the learning for the students. So we had like created these amazing slides and
mm.
real interactive for the students. And then eventually we just ended up doing hard copy booklets that we created as a team,
Oh,
and the children preferred that over sitting on the
right.
Google Classroom. So it was really interesting, the transition, because in the beginning they were all fine with it, and then
Mm,
eventually they were like, you know what, we just want something hard copy to actually write on instead of being
mm,
online the whole time. So that was really interesting, a really big learning curve for us, as far
mm,
as less is more. Instead of trying to give the
mm,
children so much to fill in their day, it's best to give them few tasks that they can really dig their teeth into, and have that quality work come out of it, as opposed to little bits and it's half done.
mm. That's nice. Like, I wasn't expecting that answer. That's really cool. That is really, really cool. Um, Outside of your classroom, how do you look after yourself? Because obviously, as a mother, you've got family, you've got your kids to look out for. But do you do anything just for you?
Oh, I love reading. So
Mm,
if I can go and have my own little space and just read and read, that's one thing I love to do.
mm,
Also, I'm really starting to try and get back into my fitness.
mm,
So I've been doing lots of exercise, going for walks. That's been really, really important too. And me and my husband always try to every month or so go and have dinner together and just, have that time away from the kids and just downtime and
mm,
reflect. And Yeah, so always trying to do those things.
Teaching with Alofa, your Instagram
Yeah,
handle. Teaching with Alofa. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because on your page, you also talk about, the path to leadership is tautua, is service.
yeah.
How important is that to you in terms of your role in the community as an educator, your role in your school, also your family? Can you talk a
Yeah,
little bit about that?
yeah, no, definitely. So that title, Teaching with Alofa, came about because I've been doing a lot of work with whanaungatanga. So whanaungatanga is a Māori term that they use to build connection, create a family-like environment in the classroom. And, I thought, well, yeah, that's really awesome, but I wanted to put a Samoan spin, I guess, on it because I felt like, what do I do in the classroom to make connection with my students and my family? And that's through my alofa. And it's really funny because a couple of weeks ago, a parent came and dropped off a Filipino cake for me.
Wow.
But I hadn't taught her daughter, like, what, 2 years ago I taught her daughter. So I didn't even have her last year, I had her the year before. But that reminder, she said to me, that love that you had for my daughter while she was in my class, you know, really, really spoke to me, and it still does to this day. And I thought, man, that's so awesome that you don't know how you're going to affect children,
Yeah.
years later. So, it was funny. I got lots of gifts from students and emails from parents that I didn't teach their children last year. It was a few years ago. So for me, it was that constant reminder. Yep, what I'm doing is showing alofa, and I am building that connection. So that's really awesome.
That is so cool, sis. And you hit it right. You're absolutely right when you say you just do not know the impact that you have. Like, and that's the cool thing about teaching is that every day is different. Interactions are always different. How you choose to, I mean, you walk into that classroom and you decide how things are going to run. You know what I mean? So if you go on there with a stink attitude because you're having a bad day, that's exactly what you're going to get back. And just, every time you step into that classroom, interactions are always different. Utterances, responses from student, always different. And you just never know how, in the long run, you're going to impact the lives of your students. So I just love that. It's just that is super dope, sis. That is so special, to know that, parents or former students really acknowledge and appreciate you. And I think we're also in a profession where sometimes, you know, you do wonder, man, am I doing a great job? No
Yeah.
one says anything, you do wonder, other parents, am I being approachable enough? Do they feel trust and confident enough to come and chat to me? You're always kind of checking yourself and doing self-reflection, but sometimes people don't outright say we appreciate you. It's one of those jobs where you just kind of like you're always on the grind, doing the mahi, going hard
Yeah.
because you're so passionate and because you love the job. So, when you get moments like what you've just shared, it's like, yo, man, this is what it's about. It's about someone coming back and say, hey, I remember this time we did this thing in class and it really spoke to me. Or you mentioned something last week that resonated with me. I was having a bad day, you cared, you said hello to me when I was having a horrible one. All those little things. People don't necessarily shout it out from the rooftops, but it's
Yeah.
always nice when people can come back and share just how meaningful and purposeful you are as an educator. So that is just special, sis. Seriously, I love that. So we always say that as educators, as teachers, we are lifelong learners. We never stop learning. So I was wondering, like for you, how do you stay on top of your game? you know, aside from everything else that you've got going in your life, you know, all those other important people that you look after in terms of your professional development, pedagogy, all of that. How do you stay on top of your game so that you're the best that you can be when you're in front of your learners?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I finished my grad dip in TESOL, so I did that. It took me 4 years part time study doing that, but that really was such a valuable time of professional development for me because it really opened up my eyes as far as supporting ESOL English language learners and also all the other strategies and pedagogy that I was learning behind it actually supported the teaching of all students and not just our English language learners. So that was one thing I did. Also, I always try and look for, you know, maybe in my holidays, I'm such a, I won't do like PRD or workshops
Yeah,
online, you know,
yeah.
I always make sure I'm part of communities. So I'm part of certain communities, and they'll send up professional readings, and I make sure I'm reading that or having conversations with like well learned people who I mean, I've got one colleague that I work with, and he's just so into, research and study. And he'll be like, "Oh, have you read this? Or you should try this out." Or, he's just so dynamic and really into all this stuff. I'm like, "Oh, well, So it's just being around the right people as well who have that mindset who are constantly wanting to self improve and being part of the Instagram community too with other teachers is really valuable. Really, really valuable.
And I mean, with COVID, I think one of the cool things that came from the pandemic is availability, like workshops online, like more and more workshops were moving online. So yeah, there was a period where I was just kind of like, oh, I'm all PD'd out, man. Because we were just like I kid you not, man, like every weekend had a PD, and then because of the time difference, it would be like late in the evening or early in the morning. So that's what I've loved about the pandemic. But I've also, there have been times where I've just been like, okay, I'm doing so much PD, like I just trying to manage time, right? So
Yeah, but
yeah, so
you've got to digest the PD
yes,
too. So sometimes,
absolutely,
oh, I'm going to do this, but you haven't really chewed over it and thought, okay,
yes,
how am I going to apply it in my practice, or what am I going to
absolutely.
do with this? Yeah.
I was wondering what advice you have for teachers on those rough days. Because teaching is not just about the happy stuff, man. Like,
No,
there are
no.
days where you're just like, I don't want to, I should have just stayed home, or you're feeling ill. And how do we uplift our colleagues on those days? How do we, lift their spirits? What can we do?
What can we do? Well, I know for me, when I'm having a really bad day, I need to leave the classroom. And I'm not saying when I'm with the students, I just walk out, but I think
Where's she? Oh, where's your teacher gone? She just gapped it, man. She gapped it. She's gone. Who does that?
but I think the biggest thing a lot of teachers do is not go to the staff room and not go and have a break. That's probably one of the biggest flaws because we want to, oh, I've got this to do. I've got to finish this. I've got to finish this. They don't take the time to get out of that surroundings and actually have a break. And I think that's really important. That took me a while to learn because I like to I want to be in the classroom. I want to make sure everything's done for my students. But in natural fact, I'm damaging my own well being by doing that. And so, one thing I would say is please take your breaks. It's so, so important. Have that time to go out of the classroom and have a breather away from the environment. That way, when you come back in, you're refreshed and you're ready to go and ready to roll with your next session with your students. So that's really, really important.
Great advice, sis. I needed that reminder. Thank you. Thank you. You were giving the advice, and I was like, "Am I being attacked right now?" I feel attacked. I'm feeling like she's attacking me. No, that was actually a great reminder. Great advice. Awesome reminder for me too.
Yeah.
Um, when you were starting out as a teacher, how did you deal with, because I think this happens to everyone, how did you deal with those doubts that usually, am I really going to be able to care for every child's individual needs? What if everyone in my class fails? Like, how did do you remember like how you were able to kind of get past that, now that you've been teaching for a while?
Um, I think for me, the biggest thing starting out was making sure I asked questions, making sure that if I needed help, that I spoke up, and not being afraid to be wrong or to make a mistake. That was probably the biggest thing in my learning of being a teacher, because I know my first year I kind of just thought, no, I'm going to do it on my own. I can do it. I'm fine. I've had the training. But then I realized, oh, no, actually, I don't actually. I need the support. I need the help. And so, sometimes you've got to kind of put aside your own fears of looking silly and just step forward and ask the questions and ask for help and get that, because there are people in your team that are really knowledgeable who can actually really support you, and it's not really scary once you say, oh, I need help, I'm not really sure about this. So I think that's being brave enough to put yourself out there.
I think as Pacific Islanders, it's difficult.
Oh
It's
yeah, it is.
challenging at times, to do that. So that was some great advice. Great advice. Um, you know, what's the biggest misconception that people have about teachers?
But we've got lots of holidays.
Yeah, man, what's up with people? Hey, they're like, oh, but you're always on holiday. It's like,
We're
because
actually,
we work hard. That's why.
or because really in the New Zealand setting in particular, the holidays in between the terms are not really holidays. People are actually
Right.
doing schoolwork. People are actually doing
Exactly.
planning. People are in school, setting up their classrooms again. So they don't really have a break until maybe the next week, or whatever they decide. But majority of the time, they're still working. Marking, doing whatever we have to do, writing reports. I mean, once it's report writing time, that that's really difficult because people are doing that during their break as well.
It's interesting that you bring that up about the holidays, and the misconception of time. When I was teaching in New Zealand, it's exactly how you said it right there. You were just like, you never really on a break because you're always doing PD, you're doing courses, you're planning. So it never felt like a break. When I came to Japan, the way that our school runs is, I think it's the American holiday system. So I have never felt like I truly had holidays as a teacher until I came to Japan.
Oh,
So
okay.
so what I mean is like it's always, like we have so my school, for example, we have a semester system. So semester 1, semester 2. So we have autumn break in November. We have end of October, and then we have Christmas break, which is in December. Then we have a short winter break. So right now we're on a short, what they call winter break, but it's really a long weekend. So the
Okay.
kids, so the kids get 5 days. We get 4 days because we're going back to do PD next Wednesday. Just a teacher only day. Then we have spring break in March. Then we finish school in June, and then it's summer break, which is like 12 weeks or so. Like which
Okay.
is which is like our New Zealand like December Christmas break, right? That's
Yeah.
when our summer break is mid year. But the reason why I explain this is because I have never like really felt like I had a holiday till I came here, and it's like we go hundies, man. We like work 200 from week whatever to this week because and then we know, oh, we've got spring break coming up, right, which is 10 days, and then it's like, oh, we've got like it's just such a reward knowing we've got these breaks coming up and it's an actual break. Like during the what I mean I said before, like PD doesn't necessarily take place in the holidays except for summer vacation. So summer break, which is mid-year, there might be some courses running there, but every other time it's usually maybe in the evenings on a weekday or in our weekends. So it's just, yeah, like holidays here for me has been like, okay, we've got this. I'm doing podcast stuff for my 4 days and I'm just doing a lot of reading. I might go out and just do some exploring, but it really does feel like, everyone's like, school
Wow,
is school, it's done, and then holiday is
that's so
holiday. So
good.
you reminded me when you were explaining that, this misconception of time and the fact that, excuse me, teachers have holidays in New Zealand, but it never felt that way. Like in New Zealand, I always was super exhausted because we work beyond the 9 to 5, 9 to 4, 8 to 4, whereas here, like, it taught me to turn off at this time because when you go back the next day, that work is still going to be there.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
I think it goes back to what you mentioned earlier about setting those boundaries and expectations. I know I'm going off on a tangent, but you
No,
just
no,
reminded me
yeah,
when you were talking about that because I was like, I don't want to be that guy, but I don't miss that.
yeah. No,
Like, I
I'm
just,
sure you don't. I'm sure you don't.
like, and I always think, my teacher friends, when they talk about I feel for them because I know what it's like, I'm like, man, and I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's not difficult here. Like it is super stressful. Like you said, same as report times and everything. We got deadlines and all these goals that we're working towards. But man, holiday is holiday.
Yeah, and I think there needs to be a change of mindset here, where if it is holidays, let the teachers have holidays. Let's just do the
Yes.
PD during the term and the report writing during the term, so that people can just rejuvenate and come back the next term. Because the only time I really have a holiday is at the end of the year. That Christmas break. That's the only real holiday, because I can't really do personal reading during the term holidays because I'm still doing work related things, which it's really really sad.
It is. It is. If a book was written about you, about your life, what would the title be? Um, do you think?
Oh my gosh, interesting. Um, Probably obsession.
Ooh, tell me more. Just kidding. I was like, sis, should we take this off camera? Is there something you want to share? Just kidding, just kidding.
No, I think maybe because I have quite an when I get into a task, it's quite an obsessive thing. I'm get really when I set my mind to something, I
Right.
really set it, and that's why I've been obsession, because I can get quite obsessed with things.
I feel you. I feel you. No judgments here. No judgments here, sis.
I was going to
Um,
say it's clean. It's a R
oh,
13.
absolutely. R13, folks. R13. Um, so you mentioned reading. You like to read. Do you have a to be read list? I don't know if you, like. I'm always talking about how I have this ridiculous TBR list, to be read,
Yeah, yeah.
because I'm always adding things. Alelo, it's like, you want the list to get smaller and smaller, but my list is like, okay, it's like, why do you keep adding books to the damn list that it's gonna take you years to get through? Anyway, let me stop. Do you have a TBR list?
So books I want to read or books
Yeah,
I have
books
read?
waiting to be read. Like,
Oh my gosh, so many.
yeah.
Well, I haven't read. There's a new book that's come out that Lani has as a new online book. I'm just trying to remember what the title of the book is actually. Earth's
That's her
Embrace.
new one, right? Is it available now?
Yeah,
Okay, I need to
yeah.
look it up, eh? I need to look it up and buy it. So I was wondering about book recommendations. You did mention earlier that you love to read. It's something that you like to do in terms of self-care, which is fantastic. What book recommendations do you have for our listeners and viewers?
So, Relentless by Tim S. Grover is a really good book.
Oh, okay.
So, it's basically about being relentless in, your pursuits in life and not worrying about what other people think, what other people say, but just stepping out and being that risk taker. So, it's quite a good book. Highly recommend that for anybody who wants to be relentless in their life.
Let's
Um,
go. Really, for real. I carry on, sis. You're all good. You're all good.
so that's an awesome book. Also, my recent book that I've read is Bounce by Matthew Said, and that book is like it's quite life changing for me because it's a book about how talent is not what gets us through; it's actually effort. So if you can put in the hard work, if you can put in the practice, you can actually be as amazing as any of those top athletes, any of those, grand pianists, anything. You can really, if you really put your mind to it, you just need to put in the effort and the practice. And why it's life changing for me, it's because as an educator, that's my mindset with my students, right? I always think, right, I am going to make a difference in this child. You're going to get at this level. And so if they put in the practice too, if they put in the effort, those changes can happen. So it's a really great book. It also talks about that growth mindset as well. So I really encourage anyone who just wants that boost and that encouragement that you can, become whatever you want to be. Really.
Amen, sis. That is for real. That is.
So those are two great books, but also I thought I'd just plug in our Pasifika people. So this
Yes.
Pasifika Woman is a really great book by Lani. Um, and this one here, The Mole Movement, if anyone has a chance to read this is a really good read. If people are and to that end also
Yay.
Tama Samoa. So I'm just giving a plug to our Pasifika writers out there.
Yes, that's what's up, sis. Have you read Va, the anthology?
Yes, I have. I
Okay,
have.
I'm halfway
I've read
through.
that. Oh, okay. I
I'm going
won't
to be
say anything.
finished. I mean, I really want to talk about it, but maybe I might bring on I'm thinking of hopefully doing a panel or something later. Like, I know others, some other bookstagrammers have read it or are reading it. I really want to talk about it. I've been wanting to tweet about it. I'm like, I need to get through it first. I'm just over halfway. So there's so much I want to say about it, but I think we can
Oh,
do
I
something
know.
else so we can talk about it. I would
Yeah,
love
no,
to like.
definitely. It's a great. I mean, I read it during my holidays, so that was one of my holiday reads. My husband brought me a Kindle, so I was like downloading all these
Yeah.
books and just reading them during my Christmas breaks.
Man, there's a great book recommendation, sis. Thank you so much for sharing. We're drawing to a close. I realize I've kept you on screen for quite a while now. We've been giggling
Okay.
and laughing and sharing some gems about teaching. Future aspirations. Do you have any goals that you're still striving for, still trying to pursue?
Oh, my dancing career? No.
Oh yes, you can go, man. Royal family. I'll be like, I know her. She's my cousin.
What was funny though, just a side thing. When I was in high school, I was in a Filipino dance group, and
Wow.
I'm very tall, right? I'm very
Yeah.
tall, so I ended up dropping out of the group because it was like this. The height difference. I'm like, this is not gonna work. It's just
Oh
not
my
gonna work, man.
gosh.
So it was quite funny. It was fun, but yeah,
Yeah.
just being a giant the whole time wasn't good. Uh,
Man, that is so funny.
um, but I think for me, maybe trying to get into senior management, maybe I've never actually been a team leader or anything like that. I don't want to be a principal. It's not really principalship's not really my thing, but maybe probably deputy principal or AP or something like that. But I don't want to be the one wholly responsible for the whole school, and I still want to be in the classroom.
Right, right.
I still want to be in the classroom. I
Yeah,
love teaching. I love being with the
yeah.
kids. That's what motivates me.
I just before I hand it over to you to drop some final gems for the show, to drop some words of encouragement, I just want to say for everyone watching and listening, like Laureen and I just met. Like seriously, we
Yeah.
just met. We just met now. Like we haven't even met in real life. We actually just
No.
met just before. As I put her onto this live stream here, and yeah, we really just met. But I'm so appreciative, sis. Like it's so nice to hear from educators. Like I've talked before about being intentional about people that come on the show. Like I bring people on that just truly inspire me, and I love to see what they're doing online, and I love getting educators. Like if I'm intentional about education, I love bringing educators on. I love seeing what you are doing in your classrooms. I love hearing stories about how you are uplifting and building up our learners, regardless of where you are in the world, like, so I am so grateful that you were able to come through. As I said right at the beginning, weekends, that's family time. And as teachers in New Zealand, it's hard to get those, to kind of like fully close yourself off from that school life. So I know I'm cutting into your precious family time with
That's
your
okay.
ainga, and as we're doing this interview. So I do appreciate you. You've dropped just so much knowledge during this podcast interview, and I feel really empowered. Like I feel like you've shared things that have been real timely reminders for me as an educator. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and just want to wish you all the best, just for the rest of the year, as you journey throughout the rest of the year with your students, with your own family. Just, keep your head up, keep strong, keep inspiring, keep being a change maker, and impacting our kids there at your school. So I know. I always get super emotional around this part because I
Yeah.
always leave feeling inspired and feeling like after this I'm gonna go and plan a whole unit. No, I'm not, but I'm just no,
No,
it's the
don't do
weekend.
that.
But I that's how I feel. Like when I hear that you guys are out there just being change makers, that inspires and motivates me to just be a better teacher, to keep learning. So thank you, sis. Thank you, Laureen, so much. I know we're going to have more conversations outside of this
Yeah, no,
podcast.
definitely.
So I definitely look forward to reaching out and learning more from you, hearing more about your journey. So let me stop now and just hand it over to you just to, wrap up the show, and just some last words for our listeners and our viewers.
Well, first of all, Rosa, thank you so much. It has been such an entertaining time for me. I mean, first of all, when you asked me, I was like, "Oh my gosh, really?" Ooh. But it's just been, it's funny how when you just meet people and you just make that connection, it's just so amazing. I think that whole being Pacifica, being Samoan, and we just naturally gravitate to one another. And my thing for everyone who is watching and listening and is just be yourself, be authentic, be yourself. If you want to have a laugh with your students, if you want to dance in the classroom, if you want to do whatever you are, just be authentic and true to yourself, because I believe the children will connect to you so much more when you are really who you are. So I think, don't try and be anyone else, but be that inspiration. You don't know who you're going to impact and whose life you're going to change. So just keep being awesome.